Hey, welcome to my channel. I'm Samantha Salmon, National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. And today we're talking about something I know many of you struggle with, right? Staying raw, even when you know it's the best thing for your body, mind, and soul. So whether it's cravings, social pressure, emotional eating, or just plain lack of variety, I see it all the time with clients, right? I work with folks to improve their metabolic health. That includes their brain health. They're, looking to eat plant-based, but they're having issues with follow-through. They're dealing with chronic low mood, so they're struggling with the dietary component, even though they're getting support from psychotherapists. Folks just looking to release excess fat. They're trying to avoid some of the chronic diseases they've seen their family go through, right? Diabetes, cancer, obesity, heart disease, right? Some of these issues. And what I've noticed over the years of coaching, I've actually been coaching since 2015, right? So it's been about a decade. And what I've seen is that not everyone wants to be 100% raw, which is totally fine. That was like one of the main points in the Raw Food Health Empowerment Summit, is that raw foods is so expansive and abundant and fun. And it's fun for your cells, right? For your metabolic health. And at the same time, we do have a faction of the raw food community online that has historically been very regimented, like 100%. And for us personally, like I like to take a more intuitive approach. I listen to my body and I see how it likes certain things, how it's responding to certain things. I don't negate what science says, right? But I also need to verify and validate how I'm feeling, right? Same thing with my clients, we've had customers, even with the store, Ertiling Cafe, where folks were allergic to apples. I didn't understand it, but it didn't matter if I didn't understand it or not, because this person's allergic to apples. They can't have apples. They're going to have an adverse reaction. So we have to figure out something else, right? There's no, in that capacity, this is not the space and time to figure out the why, right? That's what researchers do, her doctors, whoever, all these folks that are working on stuff like this. There are different issues folks have. Histamine intolerance, FODMAP issues, different allergies and things, Crohn's. There's different issues folks have with foods that science may say is healthy to eat, yet you may be experiencing, I can't digest this, or you have an actual health issue going on where that food is not the best to eat at that time, right? So we have to take a whole bio-individual approach, and that's really what my practice has always been about, with my training as a integrative nutrition coach. Integrative nutrition means we look at these foods, right, that nourish the body, right? But these foods are secondary, and the primary foods are the most important, which we're actually going to really dive into and touch on today, because this is really important when we talk about why are we struggling with consistency. For those of us who've tried raw before and you're not sticking to 100% raw, and maybe you're beating yourself up about it, we're going to talk about that, all right? Because these things that I mentioned earlier about emotional eating, craving, social pressure, this stuff, they're issues, but they're not the real issues. We're going to go deeper, okay? The foundational reason as to why you're falling off the raw food wagon, okay? Let's get into it, okay? Maybe, hopefully, you'll have a breakthrough today. So the first main thing that I want to mention is the mindset. The mindset it's foundational, right? Why do a thing, right? You're not going to stick to something if you don't know why you're doing it, right? That why is so important for the commitment. Now, your why could be, maybe you're dealing with some hormonal imbalance and you feel like raw foods is going to help you or support you in this. And so you have that motivator, right? You're feeling the pain of it and you want to see the results. So you're highly motivated. Maybe you're going through cancer and you want to just infuse your body with antioxidants, phytonutrients, foods that will help your body heal and fight the cancer, right? To boost your immune system. This is a strong why, right? And in both of these things, like when it's a health issue and you're looking to see a result, there's this time constraint where, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it for this period of time to assess how my body's responding. And in these periods, I find my most successful clients are the most motivated, right? I remember I had a client some years ago who had overcome cancer already, right? She had just finished treatment and she was on, I believe, tamoxifen or some drug that she had to take in that period because they watch you for 5-10 years after, right? Just to make sure that you're really in the clear. And she wanted to make sure she didn't have a cancer recurrence. And so when she came into this coaching container, she was highly motivated. She knew what she wanted. She wanted hypernutrition, right? As Dr. Brooke Goldner says. She wanted to infuse her body with the most nutrition possible from whole foods. And she wanted to maintain consistency because her plan, her goal, what she saw for her life is being 10 years out and not having a recurrence of cancer. Now, we can never 100% guarantee, right? Because the causes of cancer, just like any other metabolic dysfunction, is pretty vast. There are many things that can contribute, some of which are outside of our control. Dr. Lissa Rankin wrote a really great book. I can't remember. I think it's called Mind Over Medicine. I feel really strongly that could be the title, so you could look it up. Because I read it years ago, probably like I was living in Chicago at that point. So years ago. And she had mentioned in the book, like at the top of the book, because the book is really about spontaneous remission of cancer. And at the top of the book, she talks about how she was working as a doctor in the Bay Area, seeing patients who they're well-to-do. They're eating very clean, right? They're eating all the kale, drinking all the green juice, and they're still getting sick. And she was pointing to some of the psychological issues going on with them not being self-expressed, having all of these issues, relationship issues and different stuff, and they're holding in all of this without seeing somebody, getting some kind of treatment, either from a psychotherapist or, I don't know, a coach, someone to talk to and actually work with someone who can help them. They were holding it in, and it manifested into cancer and other kind of like autoimmune issues and things like this. But specifically, this book was focused on cancer. So these folks cancer was developing from this. And can we control that? Yeah, there are tools. We can try to control it as much as possible, right? But how I see nutrition and a healthy lifestyle is really about doing the best we can do to give our bodies a fighting chance, right? To be as strong as possible, to be as healthy as possible, right? Given our environment, right? We're living in an environment where we have microplastics everywhere. They're finding it in fetuses. They're finding it in the brain. So somehow it's permeating the blood-brain barrier. Some of us, we have to undergo surgery for no fault of our own. And then in the surgery, obviously, you might have to have anesthesia. That anesthesia does affect your brain. If you get diagnosed with cancer and you have to go through chemotherapy, that chemo affects the brain. There are things that we just don't have 100% control over, but we're going to do the best we can do. And when you have a strong why, and raw foods is part of that why, or being hyper-nourished is part of that why, then you are definitely going to stay with it, right? You don't have to do anything special because you already have a vision. It's like a built-in SMART goal. SMART is specific, measurable, actionable, relative, and I think it's relative, and time specific. Right? So the time specific part is the most important one too. It's specific and measurable. So you have a specific goal. I want to feel like this by this date. And that's how I know I have been successful, right? This is a SMART goal, and folks who come in with that assignment on themselves, right? They already have that strong why. They're committed. They don't fall off the wagon, right? Yes, you're going to have difficulties. You're going to have cravings and da-da-da, but you're highly motivated and you stay on, right? That's the main thing. The second thing is like your big purpose, right? Which is very much connected to the main thing I just mentioned about the mindset, right? But in this, like actually writing a letter to your future self about why this matters, like why raw food. What I found in doing this work is that yes, raw foods is very effective when it comes to releasing excess fat, eating as much as you want. That has been my experience, right? You can build muscle on raw. I've interviewed people like this. I've had the experience like this. There's going to be more interviews coming up with people like this, right? But is that a strong enough why? I find in my community that people aren't really that motivated to release the fat unless it's causing some kind of pain. And I get it. I understand that, right? I personally feel the same way. I like to experiment with my body and see what my body can do, see how I feel when I make certain adjustments to my diet. I like doing those things. It doesn't really pull away from me. It feeds me. For some people, they're very much into their jobs, their work, their identity is wrapped up in other things, and doing this extra just feels like a burden. However, if you get a cancer diagnosis, all of that stuff clears away. So it makes it really easy to stay. And what I'm saying here, I don't wish a cancer diagnosis on anyone or any kind of metabolic dysfunction. But what I am saying is if you're not sticking to it and you're not having any major issues, just release yourself from the guilt, right? You don't have to be raw at all, right? You don't have to be raw. You actually don't have to eat vegetables or any fruit. You can eat whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. I'm assuming you're listening to this and you are a grown adult and you make choices, and hopefully you're making choices that make you feel good, that make you mentally feel good and make you physically feel good. And if you find that when you experiment with raw foods, you physically feel good and you want to do more, you do more. You don't have to force yourself to be consistent because you'll want to do it, right? And so like for me personally, I feel my digestive health, my mental health is better, my hormonal health is better when I do raw, when I walk, when I journal, right? I have my self-care practices and my diet is part of that. My physical activity is part of that. There's no falling off the wagon because I'm on the wagon. Sometimes a wheel may fall off and it's a kind of wobbly, and I have to fix that. But I'm not off the wagon because I'm responding to how I feel, and making sure that I feel good is a high priority for me, right? That's a high priority for me. I have talked to folks who their own self-care has not been a high priority, which we're going to have an episode on coming up shortly on some Jungian philosophy around this. I think there's a really interesting take on that group of folks and why they operate that way. And I hope to have my mom on for that conversation. So we will pick that up at that time. But just to recap our conversation around like why you're struggling to stay raw, even if you know that this is what you want to do, right? Is you got to get the mindset right, have a why. And if you don't have a strong why, don't beat yourself up about it. It's probably not that important right now. It's just probably not. You probably have bigger issues in front of you that you need to pay attention to, and that's totally fine. Okay? So just like release yourself from the stress. Also, it may be beneficial to write a letter to your future self about why this matters, what you're looking to achieve, and what you want. Anytime I'm working towards something, I put it in my calendar. Like by this date, I should have accomplished da 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 da. Because I'm running a test. Is it gonna work for me? How does it work for me? So I know going forward, okay, when I do this, when I do A, my result is B. And if I want B in the future, I need to do A, right? You can even create a vision board for yourself and have, as part of your morning routine, affirmations or whatever it is you need to remind you that this is the path you're on and why you're on it, right? Always connecting back to the why. Why am I doing this? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And when you have that kind of mentality, then you're going to stay consistent, right? So here's what I want you to do. If you are ready to finally make raw eating sustainable for you, right? You have your strong why, you know why you want to do it. I think Raw for Lent, which is a container that I do every year, I do a different version of Raw for Lent. And this year has a different version inspired by someone in my group, a former client. It's 40 days of raw inspiration. It's a special series featuring some of the most popular raw food and health focused episodes that I've put out there. And every day you'll receive motivation and tips to help you stay on track and fully embrace the raw lifestyle over the Lenten period. So you have this 40-day period. It's a container. You can go in it with a goal. You can solidify into that. Maybe your why is that you just want to have this time of deep connection to God, and you don't want heavy digestion to impede that, right? Because that's one of the things that many folks have talked about, is that when you eat raw, the food is so high vibration and so light. It's not, you can get the calories without it weighing you down. Like instead of when the plant-based or high raw vegan, you're eating grains, you're eating beans, and grains and beans, they can weigh you down energetically. Raw foods does not do that. And so if you decide to stick to it in this 40-day container and use that opportunity whenever you're feeling cravings and things like this, or feeling like you're left out of social interaction because you're raw, this is the time now to lean on God. God is your social support. God is your sustenance. When cravings are attacking you and you know you're not hungry, but you want to eat for maybe entertainment, for loneliness or anger, frustration, whatever. We say don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Don't get too hungry. You're going to eat as much as possible. And I'm going to be interviewing over the coming days some folks who have some amazing raw recipes. So just stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed so you get notified when those episodes drop. We're actually going to be doing some lives. But angry, lonely, tired, these are things you can take to God in prayer. Why am I tired? Am I not catering to my needs enough? Am I putting everyone else's needs above my own? Am I overworking myself because I don't trust that God will have my back? You want to go to God with some of these questions and wait for the answers, right? So use this opportunity to deepen your spiritual relationship, and raw foods is a great gateway for that. Like a lot of folks have said that. And so you get 40 days of inspiration when you register for Raw for Lent. The link for that is in the description, so you can check that out there. And that's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe, and if you're listening to the podcast, leave a review. I would really appreciate it. It helps to get the message out there. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, click the notification bell, because that also helps the video get more visibility. And I would just love to hear some comments from you below on your thoughts on everything that we discussed here today. If you've had an experience, a spiritual awakening during your raw period, I would love to hear about it. Okay, so you can let me know in the comments below. And I think some of that, as people read it, they'll be really encouraged by it. So I appreciate you for sharing in advance. And remember, transformation starts with a single step, right? First you have your big why, and then you take that first step. Okay, so until next time, stay well, Stay committed and keep nourishing yourself in all the best ways, emotionally and physically. All right? See you soon.